instead of tomorrow because I've got a busy week, and I thought we would go ahead and reuse some 100% cotton watercolor paper on the back side. I'm gonna go ahead and use this. This is either Arche or Bao Hong. I feel like it might be Arche. It does feel like it texture wise. And so let's see, what is YouTube telling me? New managing moderators can support your channel even more ways, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'll check that up later. All right, I did leave the chat open today. I don't know how much chatting we'll be doing besides maybe me just painting a little quickie here. I am going to do a subscriber live, so if you're here for the chat, that would probably be the one you'd want to join. It's based off Instagram, and it's my subscription channel. And so there is a monthly fee. It's $2.99 a month, super cheap. And it's just a group where we have a chat, and we also paint live every week. And it's kind of a more personal feel, I guess, if you were to call it something. And it is also somewhere where I release newer products and sometimes things I'm working on, and so you'll have first dibs on certain paint makers, that kind of stuff. There are no like promises, and there's no set schedule with it. It's all organic, and what happens happens. You know, maybe 1 month there's 3 things and 1 month there's nothing, that kind of thing. So it just kind of happens as it happens, and it is what it is, that kind of thing. And so I'm going to spray my 100% cotton paper. And I am again using the back side of another piece of paper and going to see what we come up with here. Going to spread my water around to let it soak into my paper so that it has an even bit of water. There's a little bit of paint on there, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. And you want a sheen, you don't want massive puddles. I did spray quite a bit of water on here, so I'm going to tilt my board a little bit so that I can get some of the water to run off. Although all my work's practice, so I'm not super particular about, say if I have too much water on here, not a big deal for me. I'm gonna grab a yellowish color, maybe a yellow ochre, maybe a little bit of lemon yellow, and I'm going to drop that into the horizon. Hi Laura, hello. I have my laptop going so I can see some comments today at least. Let's see what else I'm gonna grab. Maybe some more yellowish. So far I've used about 3 different yellows. So I often have my palettes, well, I always have my palettes all spread out. You see this palette, you see this ceramic palette that I mix on, but you also don't see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other palettes near me. So I love to be able to grab from different paints intuitively without really thinking. So you know, people often ask, oh, what colors did you use? I often don't know because I'm not really paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm just intuitively, organically grabbing and going with what feels right and kind of what I know, right? And so the paints, that's a lot of paint. This one is heavily pigmented, so I don't pre-wet my paints, and I barely put water in this one, and it just did that. So different paints behave differently, and you know, the more you get to know your paints, obviously, the more comfortable you are with them, and the more you know what to expect when you do something like that. Sometimes I forget, especially when I'm talking or when I'm doing one of these little demos, I'll often forget what I reach for and you know, get distracted. So, and let's be honest, I probably do the same thing when I'm not talking, just because I do get in the moment of just kind of picking up color and paints and seeing where all that takes me, and just kind of letting it happen without overthinking it, without having a reference photo, or without having, you know, a deep need to paint something, or a deep feeling where I have to replicate this, or I have to get this just right, you know. And that can be fun. I mean, I don't know if I call it fun. Okay, that can be part of the journey, right? Replicating, duplicating, getting things just right. But for me, it's not a huge part of the journey. It's a part of the journey, but not a huge part. The bigger part for me is more of the intuitive, free-flowing, go by the seat of my pants. Lots of tutorials. I love tutorials. So I love learning. I love trying new things and seeing where those take me and what I can learn from other people, because there are just so many amazing people out there between YouTube and Skillshare and all the others, Patreon and all the other others. There's just so much to learn and so much to gain from seems silly not to take advantage of that, right? I know a lot of people don't like tutorials and they complain, or they say that, you know, the teaching styles are odd, but once you kind of get past all that, it kind of changes. Once your mindset kind of changes as well, I feel like tutorials are really, really helpful and can be a really, really amazing resource. And we're so lucky to have these resources at our hands. We don't have to take a class, right? We don't have to go and sit in a classroom or, you know, anything like that. We don't have to pay most of the time. Skillshare, sure, it's like what, $6 a month, maybe $7, $8 if you don't get this special deal. But we just have so many options out there and so many different opportunities to learn, and people doing lives all the time in different styles and different everything. So I don't know. I'm just so grateful. Even from 10 years ago, it's changed so much, right? Even when I first started in 2018. Oh, hold on. Let me take the lid off my cat's food real quick. Oh, it's okay here. Here. Come on. Sorry about that. My husband will often put the bowl over the plate because they're not hungry, and so they come back to it later so it doesn't get all, you know, crusted over. So all right, it is a warm day up here in the Pacific Northwest, which is not exactly normal for us. We often don't always have warm weather, but next week I think it cools down again, so we'll be back to somewhat normal. So I do have my heat cooler thing on. It's not necessarily an AC, not a heat swamp. It's a, what's the other thing? It's skipping my brain for a second. I forget what it's called. Not a heat pump. Not a swamp cooler. No, it's a heat pump. Yeah, not a swamp cooler. All right, I am just trying to decide what colors to go with in the sky here. And again, I'm trying not to really overthink it. Just sort of putting some color in there. Lightly with a lot of water still, but not so much water that I'm putting more water into the paper that I'm using. So I'm just creating a very light layer here, trying to decide where to go next. So we got our horizon, we've got our sky. I think maybe just a little bit for the foreground, and then decide where to go, what to pursue, what direction to go next. So let's go ahead and grab some, I mean, let's go ahead and grab, you know, my favorite foreground color, some sort of green. It can be any green you have. So I will call out colors on my Patreon account a little more, but probably here I'm just going to say greenish, yellowish, that kind of feel. I don't want you to feel like you have to run out and have different certain colors. I want it to be just a use what you have kind of a feel, and not feel obligated to purchase or buy or anything like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to, it's fun, and it can definitely help guide you. But I don't want always people to have to feel like they have to rush out and buy things or do certain things because, you know, we say so, or because we use it, and we, just the greater of the creative community. And sometimes, you know, I definitely fall into that that category of getting wanty, or, you know, recommending lots of fun stuff, because there's always fun stuff to recommend. There is never a shortage of fun supplies in the art world, in my opinion. Especially once you start hitting handmade paints and other stuff like that. All right, I am just adding some texture to this foreground, so it's not one plain, it is one plain color right now, but I just want to add some different heights and different stuff, and then we'll see what happens next. All right, let's see, what should we do? Maybe just drop some yellow in there. Again, trying to keep the same consistency of water on my brush that's on my paper. So we're not introducing, my paper is still very wet except for right here on the edges. Otherwise it's very, very wet. At the right angle, you can see that sheen right there. That you're good to go if it's doing that. So where you don't see the sheen, maybe, I don't know if you can tell, but over here on the left, you don't see the sheen. And that means that if you start adding paint and water, so you can see the sheen here, but you can't see it here, well, that's when you'll start getting, you know, different kind of movement that maybe you don't want necessarily. So it's kind of just, you have to watch out for that if that's something that concerns you. It can also be a lot of fun to play with that, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. A lot of people think that, you know, blooms is what they're called. I'm dropping too much water in right now. And so you'll see that it pushes the paint away, right? So once you drop that water down, it's going to push everything, and it's going to distort, if you will, potentially distort things that maybe you didn't want to, you know, be distorted or move. Maybe you wanted everything that you already have down to stay where you put it. And so if you start adding too much water, things are going to shift and move, and that's okay. Again, it just depends on your preference. So I did add that lighter bit, and I'm just going to go in and add a few other dark spots, you know, because without the light, without the dark, we won't have the light, and without the light, we don't have dark. So you have to make sure you're also adding enough. And my sky, again, is not done, but I am letting too much of it dry to mess with it too much. If I start messing with it now, it's dry over here. I can see where it's, let me see if I can show you again. I can't show you, I don't think. No, that's okay. I think you got the idea. And if you didn't, then you can just go back and watch. So I think what I'll do now is I will dry, and then I will re-wet everything and start with another layer so that this will all kind of set. Once we dry it, it kind of sets. I'll mute so you don't have to listen to the dryer. Okay, so what you want to do is use the back of your hand to see if it's dry. It's mostly neutral to the touch. If it's cool, in certain spot, it's a little cool, so it won't, you want it to be actually all the way neutral feeling, not cool. Cool to touch means it's still wet a little bit. And depending on what you're trying to do, everything's not necessarily set, right? So it could mess up stuff for you. But nothing in mine is all that particular, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spray my work again, and then I'm going to add more to it. I'm gonna take my brush, I'm gonna wet it, clean brush, and I'm going to sweep the water across so that we have a nice evenly wet paper to work with. And by tilting my paper, I can see where the water is and where I need more or less water, and either pick up the water or add more water. So here we go. We have a little bit of color. I'm not a huge fan of how light it is in color, so I'm going to go ahead and add more to the sky. And you don't have to. If your preference is to keep it that light, then absolutely keep it that light and go for it, and do what makes you happy. And that's part of art. So I add a bunch and then I take away. Add some, take it away. Okay, so you saw all that blue and you just start taking it away. You can add slowly, and maybe you would eventually take less away, but I kind of find it fun to do it this way. And of course you can do it your way, whatever works for you, whatever you enjoy the most, whatever is the most fun. And this was the orange that's very potent. So let me just grab a little bit. And again, we're just kind of dropping in a little bit of color, and then we move it all around. So it might look crazy right now. You're like, well, why did she do that? Because now you get to fiddle with it, right? It's not like crayon. You put crayon down and you're done, or marker and you're done. This you can fiddle with, right? I'm assuming same with acrylics to a degree. I don't work in acrylics, but I know that you can add more color onto acrylics and cover up stuff. Now that doesn't necessarily work in watercolor the same way, but there are ways to fix things in watercolor. Nothing's set in stone necessarily. You can do a lot of things to either save your piece, change your piece, alter it, edit it, so to speak, and achieve different things. So, you could have stayed where I was in that first place with that very light bit of coloring. If you preferred a lighter pastel like sky, I do tend to go a little bit moodier, so I do like moody. And what I'm doing now is just sort of tapping in cloud shapes, and not shapes by any means at all, just sort of little suggestions, I would say, more than anything. Suggestions of clouds, suggestions of wispies in the sky, of movement, of something happening, right? Of just maybe just a little bit of change in the atmosphere. I don't know. Just mixing it up a little bit. Sorry for the heavy breathing. I forget sometimes that the microphone picks all that extra noise up. That can be a little obnoxious at times. So these are intuitive. Again, I don't follow any kind of reference photo. I just kind of go. And if I decide not into it right now, right? Just no. I can take a dry brush, a hockey brush, soft brush, hairbrush, perfectly dry, and just sweep things away. And there we have a much more softer, subtle sky. And that can be a really quick fix to kind of reset yourself and decide what you want to do. And as you can see, I did just drag a bunch of hair and different little debris into my piece here. And this, I have to be honest, always happens to me. So I'm constantly trying to just pick stuff up. I take my round 4 and I just kind of hope that I scoop it up. Everything's still really wet, so this works. If it was half dry, do not do this at all. You'll have to dry it and then re-wet it and see if you can move stuff around. But the idea is to get anything off now while it's still wet. And yep, just kind of pick it off, urge it off. If it doesn't, sometimes I'll just leave it. All right, I have 7 minutes to finish this up and get done. Oh, thank you, Mary, thank you. And then I have to go do my subscriber live. So let's add maybe some more details for the trees. I'm gonna take a dark greenish, a very dark greenish color, maybe add some Payne's gray to it. Payne's gray is a great color to add to a lot of different things. It's got a little bit of blue in it and then a little bit of sometimes, Payne's grays are so different. But anyway, the blue can do a lot for the green. So you can add indigo, Prussian, Payne's gray. You can add a little bit of neutral tint to greens. I just find that most greens, in my opinion, this is only my opinion, and in my experience of watercolor painting, I do paint daily, so I have a little bit of practice with what I do and don't like, but it's only a personal thing. But I do typically like to add something to my greens, whether it's blue, a little bit of black, like I said, or even a little bit of orange or burnt sienna or something to that extent. So that's what I'm doing off screen. You can't see right now. I'm just mixing up a very dark green and adding a bunch of colors to it until I get something that I like. And I'm not getting it yet, so I'm going to add a little bit of indigo versus Payne's. And different colors will mix differently, right? And water down differently and heavily pigmented differently. So I feel that sometimes you're better off with the different indigo or a different Payne's gray, right? They're not all created equal. So that's why sometimes it takes me longer than others, because again, I'm just grabbing whatever colors are nearby. I do like convenience colors as well. So I like to mix, and I also like to just grab a specific color that's already, but truth be told, even with convenience colors, I'm always mixing. So even when you see me using heavily granulating paints, I am often mixing those with more colors. So I'm not a purist in any way whatsoever. I just love mixing colors no matter what. And I feel that color is such a very personal experience and journey. So I like to make sure that my colors in my art represents that part of me versus just using pre-made colors always and just kind of not coloring in the dots, so to speak, or not I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I just like to make sure that it's different every time. So I don't make color maps of what colors I use and how to mix those colors up. And I won't tell you how to mix, a specific green that I love. Like I just did, I told you a general idea. But I want you to have that fun and that experience and that experimenting time to do that for yourself. And I think that's a really, really important time for you as a artist, newer, older, whatever stage we're in, right? Is to play with the colors and to see where that takes us and what feels right and what feels good and what colors work. You can go on YouTube and Google any kind of color you want. Say you love Daniel Smith's Moon Glow, or you like, I don't know, some other schminky granulating color. There are so many you know, little demos out there demonstrating that, and you can find those and you can make those colors yourself. You don't have to go out and buy them. Okay, what I'm going to do is dry one more time, add my finishing touches, which if you know me is going to be birds and is going to be splatter. I feel like this camera frame is really, really crooked. Also, if you know me, that that's going to drive me crazy. So I had to fix it. All right, drying time. I'll be right back. Okay, once again, this is the important part. We do want to make sure our paper is really dry when we add our birds. Because our birds are such a fine, well, my birds anyway, are such a very fine detailed item. I don't want this to bleed. I don't want my birds get any bigger. I've been struggling lately again with my birds. I don't know what it is. I'm overthinking it. So my birds are not wispy anymore. They're like these big bat-looking flying monkeys. So anyway, I don't know what's going on, but every once in a while, you know, that kind of hits, and so I'm back at square one with my birds, and they're not going like they're supposed to, so I'm not going to talk during my birds. See if I can just get a very light wispy bird out, and that's all I want. There we go, just a very light wispy bird, just like that. Yeah, geese, Laura, they are. They're giant geese, and I don't want giant honking geese flying through my darn picture. Damn it. I want nice, delicate bird suggestions way far off in the distance. Speaking of Laura, these are my favorite shimmers. Thank you. Is that you wonking through there like a goose? Or calling my geese wonky? Oh, okay, so my favorite splatter brush is my size 4. A round brush. It's just what works for me. You're going to want to try all different ones that work for you. I do like to get a lot of water. Decide what color I'm going to use. I'm going to use this pretty pink. This one's called, I really need to get a color map going for this because I have to take them out every time because I can never remember. It's either Lafayette. Thank you. That's really nice of you, Alec. Thank you. I think this is Lafayette. Is it? No, it's Aphrodite. Sorry. They're right next to each other. And I should know the difference because Lafayette, whatever it is a lot shimmerier, but clumpier. Okay, so I do add a lot of water. So what I'm going for is this kind of puddling, if you will. And I don't use a lot, so I don't need a lot. But I do want it liquidy enough that it's going to splatter off my brush, right? If I don't have it liquidy enough, it's not going to splatter off my brush. If I have it too wet, I'm going to get big giant splatters that are going to just be more watery blobs than delicate little shimmers. And I personally prefer delicate little shimmers on mine. So I do like to cover everything up because this stuff goes a little bit crazy. And what I do, I take my cloth and I wipe all around like this. Okay, I leave the tip of the paint, the tip of the brush still has the paint, but everything else I like to dry off so I'm not getting extra splatters. Okay, and then I'm gonna take my little brush and I just gently tap with my hand until I start to get splatters. And then if they're small enough and I'm happy, then I know I got the right amount on. Okay, now if I don't, then I stop and I re-evaluate my brush load with paint because I also twist my brush so that I'm getting new splatters from different sections of the brush. And I can tap harder if I want some of those finer splatters at the very end. So this was just one dip in the paint, right? And I can make it get just as much as I need. So at the end, like I said, I just hit it harder. I'm smacking my brush pretty hard. So I'm getting those little finer little last little bits of water and paint out. And that's it. That's all I do. I rinse my brush and I lay it flat. I never, ever, 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 ever my entire life leave my paintbrush in my water. Terrible habit. If you have that habit, break it. That's a terrible habit. They always lie flat on my little cloth, literally just like that, or on my little brush rests, right? And I have a lot of these because they're cute. So treat yourself to a ceramic brush rest. They're worth it. You can also use an old chopstick holder like I did for years, but the brush rests, the ceramic ones, I have to say, bring joy to my life, whereas the little chopstick one did not. And it was wood and it got wet and it didn't really look pretty. Oh, of course, Mary. Thank you for joining. I appreciate you sticking around the whole time. You did. You stayed the whole time, didn't you? Oh, that was nice of you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry I say so many times. I'm trying to break that habit, but it's easier said than done. So what I want to say about tape real quick is I did use some inexpensive tape. So you'll get these bleeds around the edges with inexpensive tape on occasion. I reuse my tape, so I'm more prone to that. And it doesn't bother me. The reason being is because if you put a mat around this, you would not see those. You could also trim it out if you wanted to. See that shimmer? Oh, come on. Come on, camera. There we go. So again, I did use a backside of another piece. And that's just to get, you know, more money for my buck because paper is expensive and I cannot find it on sale for the life of me. So here we are reusing paper, and that's okay. It's okay to do. All right, well, thank you for joining me, and we'll do another one next week. Not sure what day. It'll probably be on a Thursday next week, same time-ish. I do try to schedule it so that you can see on my page, and then you can have yourself be notified. But anyway, thanks for joining, and I will see you next time. Bye.